Welcome back, live from the NFL Combine here in Indianapolis, Indiana. We've done a lot of different angles of talking football this week, but also a lot of human interest stories, and fortunate to have one of the most, heartbreaking, for lack of a better term, but a success story of Eddie Oreily and his family, who have been able to get out of the country of Ukraine as the Russians have invaded. Titans fans based out of Ukraine, joining us now here on 104.5 The Zone. Eddie, and I apologize, I hadn't the opportunity before we came back from commercial break to meet your wife. It's a pleasure to meet you both.
Okay. You too,
Nice
man.
to meet you.
So it's Lena, if you haven't, if you didn't know.
Well, I cannot tell you how happy we are to see you and to have you as a part of the radio show today. Eddie, you guys have done as a family many interviews about this, and at some point we'll ask you to describe your experience for the audience. But before we came back for commercial, there was something that you said that you wanted to hit on outside of the story itself, and I wanted to make sure that you had the opportunity to talk about this thing the way that you want to talk about it.
I appreciate that. I would actually prefer my wife to speak on it, as she's a native Ukrainian, and you'll be able to hear more of how things are affecting Ukrainians in general.
Please.
While we understand that it's not fascinating, but everyone wants to hear a story and hear how they've helped and know that we're safe and that we're okay, and that means so much to us. But there are so many hundreds of thousands, millions that are still just trapped there with no chance to get out, with no network or people that can help them individually like that we've been helped. And I feel that it's very important that everyone know that there are still so many that are just in terrible danger that, any moment the air raid siren goes off and there's a blast to their apartment building and they're done. They're dead, and they weren't able to hug their family one last time. I'm sure that you've seen on the news all of the videos of the civilian apartment buildings. They call them flats over there.
Yeah.
That have just been destroyed recently, with Putin, the way he's changed his tactic from what he was doing originally to just trying to level cities now. So if my wife can have a minute to just talk about how it's affecting her mother and father are still there. So
please, the floor is yours.
Yes, thank you very much. Actually, it is difficult to say that I'm completely happy right now, although I am happy that my family and I are here and out of danger, right? But it is heartbreaking at the same time to know that part of my family, my parents, are still there. And there are thousands and millions of people, the majority of Ukrainians actually, who are patriots from the bottom of their heart, loving their country and fighting for it and not willing to leave, even having the opportunity or not having it financially or any other way. They just prefer to stay and to remain patriots of their country. And that's amazing. The fighting spirit is amazing. Their energy to stand for their rights, to stand for their territory and for their freedom is amazing. And every prayer helps. Every little bit counts. And the spirit which has risen all over the world is felt there. So please keep praying. And let's all hope that it finishes the best possible way, because all the Ukrainians deserve it.
I'm so happy that you wanted to discuss that element of it, because, from our end and seeing the conversation around it, obviously we've all been exposed to what's happening in the country of Ukraine and what the Russians have done in just what has become an absolute international crisis. But the feel-good element of your guys' story, I don't want to make it secondary, but from my standpoint, as somebody whose parents have worked in international politics and diplomacy for 35, 40 years, I looked at that and said, there are still so much, the way that you've described, that we are not talking about. Like it is great to celebrate the fact that you and your family have escaped this country and what it is doing, but for those who remain, you have images of grandmothers learning how to make Molotov cocktails and threatening the Russians, come get us if you dare.
They had a instruction guide on how to do it. They sent out to everybody. They were asking for donations of large glass bottles not to be thrown away, to be careful, to try to find all that you can in your garage or your shed.
It is so. I mean, it's jarring to me when we watch this. Given the fact that they have allowed at this point, based on the latest reporting, they have allowed for safe passage for supplies on both sides to be delivered. What I guess does the nation of Ukraine look at as the next move for them? What are people discussing as what needs to happen and how they are going to continue to try and rid themselves of this Russian influence that just refuses to let them go out of their clutches for the simple reason of just wanting to join NATO?
Well, they are not going to give up, that's for sure. They are going to stand on their ground, and no matter how long it takes or what it takes, or the way our president puts it, how many lives it takes. I heard him in one of the interviews yesterday say that he would like to hear the exact figure of people's lives pointed out to him, and he will just go out there and count, excuse my language, the dead bodies.
Yeah.
To know where the border is, to know when it's going to be enough for the invaders. But of course, nobody is going to give him that answer. And the people are just going to keep doing what they are doing, you know. It's the prospect of the great unknown, but hopefully the one with a positive ending, the way it can be right now.
Certainly, that is the outcome that all of us around the world are hoping for. Lena, this is something that native Ukrainians are used to, though. This existential threat of Russia on the border, constantly trying to continue to re-exert their influence, to an extent almost that Ukrainians who experienced this very same thing not that long ago, when they first tried to reclaim that as a part of the Russian territory. Is it just from the standpoint of people over there and you guys in your experience? Is this just kind of always in the back of your head, regardless of what we're seeing now, the threat that Russia is always going to continue to try this? Because as you articulated yourself, they have no interest in giving up on this.
To tell the truth, it's only now that we have come to realize that, or even when they were grouping the Russian troops all along the border, nobody really believed or wanted to believe and realize that it might get as bad as it is today. Nobody expected a full-scale invasion. Okay, they wanted to claim that the Crimean territory is theirs. Well, that's been going on slowly, off and on, for 8 years now. The same with the two most eastern regions. But why on earth would anyone think that the sovereign country, the independent, self-sufficient state, would like to have somebody, doesn't matter whether it is from Russia or from anywhere else, to come and seize the power and claim the territory? It is not clear up to the present day. And of course, everybody expects a full victory, including the eastern regions and the Crimea returning to the legal territory of Ukraine, right? And everybody hopes that it will stop once and forever.
I don't know. You guys have been. I don't know how you've done it. I mean, truly, and I don't know how the country of Ukraine continues to do it. The way the images. Go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Eddie.
Just determination. That's it.
And it comes through in the way that you see them hijacking Russian tanks with tractor trailers and things of that nature. I mean, I have been blown away by the resolve, and we in the United States, of course, and just having a little bit of living internationally in the Middle East, early part of my life, just having that as a perspective. I mean, we don't understand, I think, here in the United States just how different things are in other places around the world. And so we see these images that come to light, many people listening to this or wherever they're streaming the interview, and have seen this and are like, oh yeah, they look at the Ukrainians, they've got it. They're one-upping the Russians at their own game. These are people who aren't prepared. Look at this. This is fantastic. And still you move on from that, it would seem, because you continue to scroll to the next thing here in the US, and it kind of exits your mind, where this is going to have, I'm certain, lasting impacts on families just from a loss of life standpoint that we could not even begin to process here as Americans.
I think that when you have a president like President Zelensky
Texted you.
on to throw down and get in the trenches with his people and lead by example, pick up an AK if he has to, I think it it puts more resolve into the people of Ukraine. It puts more determination. It puts more spirit and willing to fight and stand their ground. And like my wife said, they're not going to back down. They're not going to stop until the Russians are either done or that the Russians have just fully overpowered them and taken everything they can. They won't stop. And it's an amazing thing to see. Grannies, they call them babushkas and dadushkas, walking up to these soldiers and, just giving them the business, whether it's with words or with sheer force. I'm sure you've seen the videos of these people just unarmed, just turning tank battalions around, just standing there and just talking to them. There was a video early on of a lady, probably just a little bit older than us, that had sunflower seeds, and it's the flower of Ukraine. And she walked up to a soldier and she was giving him the business, and she said, "Here, please take these seeds and put them in your pocket. So when you fall, sunflowers come from your body." It's just, it's their unwillingness to give up is just, it's an amazing thing to watch. I mean, it's hard. It's sad that it's happening. And I think the only way this ends is Ukraine just pushes everybody back or Putin dies. And it's hard to say. It's horrible to say, but he is the driving force behind this. If he's done, they're gone.
It's the entire conversation around it. This one man decides how this thing was going to go down, if they were going to invade, if they were not going to invade. And ultimately, it just seems like he wants to return to the Russia of old as he knew it growing up. And for the rest of the world, that is something that cannot be allowed to happen, for the amount of loss of life that will come as a result.
Run.
Eddie and Lena, I'm so sorry that we have to wrap up here. I have so many more questions, but as far as what people can do in support, I understand that you guys have experienced a tremendous amount of support, not only stateside, but you're currently in Germany with a German Titans fan who has been able to provide you just some kind of shelter as you figure out how to navigate in the next steps for your family. But what can we do outside of what you have already been provided to further support the people of Ukraine, or wherever we need to be directing thoughts, prayers, resources, everything else to?
There's a couple of ways. The first way, obviously, is donating money to the Ukrainian army. These soldiers initially have to buy all of their own stuff, their flak jackets, helmets, backpacks, rucksacks, boots, socks, everything they have to provide for themselves. So the more money that can come in that can fuel these guys is amazing. We have a link that we can send to you really quickly after the show.
Please do.
After we leave or get off. And the other way is, as we've come through the borders and we've been traveling through country by country, there has just been an amazing amount of selfless people that have just been donating to all of the refugees, taking refugees from the borders to hotels. The first hotel we arrived at, there was just tables upon tables of things that you may need to live: hygiene products, food, clothes. So the other way is to, if you can't, or if you don't feel comfortable directly donating to an army, because you're a pacifist or whatever your personal feelings may be, donating to the organizations at the border that have helped so many. There's been over 1 million people that have crossed the border. There's going to be more, and this stuff isn't endless, right? Money isn't endless for these organizations. So anything that you can do to help that side of it also is just really good.
Thank you guys so much for taking the time. I know that you've been through the ringer. I know that it continues to be this just ever-present thing in your lives. I don't know that talking about it more helps, but I hope that we will be able to continue to support you and your family and all of your loved ones who are still there throughout the course of this just by creating dialogue. Eddie and Lena Oreily, thank you so much for spending time with us today.
We appreciate your
Thank
time,
you.
Buck.
It's quite literally the very least that I could do. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
We'll try and transition back into some kind of competent sports conversation, I guess, coming up next.